Good morning, everyone. I'm Alan Thorall here at Untamed Strength Gym in Sacramento, California. Today I'm talking all about weightlifting belts. What do they do? Should you wear one? If so, when should you wear it? How to wear it? And some things to consider if you decide to purchase one. So what does a belt actually do? A weightlifting belt helps reinforce, improve, or increase the rigidity of your midsection. When you're lifting weights, especially free weights, it's important to brace your whole midsection so that you can more effectively transfer force into the ground with your legs. That force goes up through your rigid trunk and transfers into the moving barbell. This soft area of your body, this organ, tissue, muscle, fat, can be a power leak when you're trying to exert maximum force against the ground into the barbell. But by making this area braced and rigid, bracing as if you were gonna get punched in the stomach, you can prevent that leak in power. A weightlifting belt makes your midsection more rigid, and you can actually achieve greater intra-abdominal pressure with a belt than you can without a belt. And that's because when you're wearing a belt, you have something to brace against. So think of the lifting belt like an extra set of muscles around your entire midsection. Should you buy a belt? Yes, absolutely, but only if it's from Pioneer Fit using discount code UNTAMED10. So I'll start by saying that you don't need a lifting belt. You can get plenty strong and jacked without ever wearing a belt. You can live a full, long, healthy life without ever wearing a weightlifting belt. In fact, when I started lifting, I didn't use a belt or even know what a lifting belt was for 8 years, and I was totally fine. Don't let not having a belt prevent you from lifting weights today. And contrary to popular belief, you are not at a higher risk of injury if you decide to train exclusively beltless. In fact, some might argue that you are at less risk of injury by training beltless because you're going to be more aware and pay more attention to load management. Lifters who frequently use a belt might lean into that a bit too much and be too confident, lift too heavy too often. It's just something to consider. With that said, if you take lifting weights pretty seriously and you have some goals of squatting 300, 400, 500 pounds, deadlifting 2-3 times your body weight, and you really like adding weight to the bar, I think a belt is something you can utilize. If you want to compete in a powerlifting or strongman competition, then I do think you should invest in a weightlifting belt. So the best answer I have for the question, should I wear a belt, is I think a belt is a good tool to utilize in your training. If you have the desire to wear one and the money to purchase one, go for it. But you're not missing out on much if you decide to never wear a belt. All right, we get it, Alan. Can we move on? We want to wear belts. We're freaks. When should we wear our belt? So I'm going to walk you through my thought process of when I decide to wear a belt. These aren't concrete recommendations, but maybe they'll answer some of your questions. First, let's talk big picture. Let's pretend I'm 4 months out from a competition. On the first month of training, I'm not going to wear a belt at all in any of my training. Totally beltless. On the second and third month of my meet prep, I'm gonna wear a belt 50% of the time. So let's say I was squatting twice a week and deadlifting twice a week. I would use a belt on one squat day, not wear a belt on the other squat day. Wear a belt on one deadlift day, not wear a belt on the other deadlift day. That usually looks like a competition or main squat, I'll wear a belt. Competition or main lift, deadlift, I'll wear a belt. On the squat variation, the deadlift variation, I'll go beltless. 1 month out from a competition, I'll wear a belt 100% of the time on all my squats, all my deadlifts, even on my bench press. The reason for this scientific approach is load management, but I'll talk about that in a minute. I should mention that there's a psychological boost that I get from using a belt. So if I train for a month without a belt, once I put the belt on for some of my training, I feel stronger and more capable. And then right before competition, if I go 100% beltless and everything is done using a weightlifting belt, I feel most strong and most prepared to go to my competition and lift maximum weights. And if I train for 4 months straight with a belt, I never really get that boost throughout my training prep. It's kind of like delayed gratification. And this is also the same approach that I use when cycling steroids before competition. Let's talk about load management. So we just talked about the big picture of meet prep when I would wear a belt. Now we'll focus it in on a week of training. Using that same example that I mentioned before, if I was squatting twice a week and deadlifting twice a week, one of those squat days would be a normal competition squat, one would be a squat variation, a different style. one normal competition deadlift a week and one deadlift variation, different deadlift style. And on the second and third months that I mentioned, when I wear a belt 50% of the time, I'm gonna wear a belt for my main movements, my competition movements, and I'm gonna go beltless on the variations. 99% of the time, my secondary movement, my secondary squat or secondary deadlift is going to be lighter in absolute load than my normal competition squat. So this squat, I'm gonna do low bar, with a belt, with knee sleeves, my preferred stance, my preferred tempo, competition depth, doing everything I can to make sure that this squat is as heavy as I can get it. The variation is gonna be something like high bar squat, front squat, tempo squat, pin squat, pause squat. All of those are going to be lighter in load than my competition squat. But just because they're lighter in load does not necessarily mean that they are easier. This squat or deadlift variation might be as hard or even harder than my comp squat, but again, just lighter. For example, competition squat. I squat 455 pounds for 5 reps and I label it RP 8. I had 2 reps left in the tank. On the second squat day, let's say I'm doing front squats and I do 315 for 10 reps. And it's RPE 9 to 10. I had maybe 1 rep left in the tank. This front squat was lighter at 315 versus 455, but it was actually more difficult because it was a front squat, because it did higher reps, and because it was beltless. So this is the main thing I consider when deciding whether I should wear a belt or not. When I decide to go beltless, I'm trying to limit the amount of weight that I put on the bar while still making the movement fairly difficult because I'm not using the belt. And when I do get close to a competition, I'm gonna wear a belt for all of my main movements, every movement that I do, because I'm trying to get my body used to handling maximum weights on my back or in my hands. All right, so we've talked about wearing a belt within meet prep down to weekly sessions. Now let's go all the way down to a training session. When should I wear my belt as I'm warming up? I don't actually calculate a percentage at this percentage is when I put on my belt, meaning once I hit 57.5%, I have to put on a belt. I really don't calculate that. I usually just do at certain plate jumps. But if I do sit down and calculate when I normally put on a belt, it is roughly around 70% of when I'll put my belt on as I'm warming up. Sometimes it'll be as low as 65%. If I had to give you an actual recommendation, I would say you should put your belt on for your last 1 to 2 warm-up sets before your working sets. So if my working sets were with 315 pounds, man, this ain't gonna work. And my warm-ups were 45, 135, 185, 225, 275, maybe 295. I would put on a belt at 275. Putting a belt on for your last warm-up set or your last 2 warm-up sets just gives you an opportunity to feel the belt on your body before the working sets, before you have working weights on your back or in your hands. And if you need to make any adjustments to the weight or any adjustments to the actual belt, you can do that before you actually start your working sets. All right, let's talk about belt specifics. If you came to this video to figure out what belts you need to buy, here it is. Single prong, 4-inch, 10mm belt. That's it. You can leave this video. That 4-inch single prong, 10mm belt is gonna work for the majority of people watching this video. While I have it out here, this is the official Untamed Strength belt with the blood splatter. And you can get this on generalleathercraft.com, Pioneer Fit. Use code UNTAMED10, official belt. This one is actually a Pioneer cut, so it's got holes at every 1/2 inch. The standard belt has holes at every 1 inch, so this can be adjusted in smaller increments. If you want more support, the maximum support allowed in any federation here in the United States, you can get a 13mm belt. So 13mm refers to this width here, the thickness, 10mm, 13mm. Now, I'll say that when I was 250, 255 pounds, I loved the 13mm belt. This was my preferred belt. The 10mm belt felt fine, but it wasn't as supportive. So I like the 13mm belt. When I lost 50 pounds, now that I'm 200, 205 pounds, and I've got less of a front porch, less cushion around my midsection, I really don't like wearing this 13mm belt. It's actually more of a distraction than it is a help to my lifts. It kind of digs into my rib cage, digs into my hip bones. It just feels too bulky. So if you're just standard athletic build, you'll probably go with a 10 millimeter belt. If you've got some front porch, some extra cushion, and you really want to maximize the support that your belt gives, you can get a 13 millimeter belt as well. The next popular style of belt is a lever belt. This is not a Pioneer belt, but this is a lever belt. So you take this metal piece, this male end, insert it into the female end, and you snap it shut. People like lever belts for the ease of putting their belt on and off. I don't think it's that much of a difference. I don't have a problem putting my prong belt on, so this isn't saving me any time. But personally, I don't like lever belts. And the main reason is they leave this overlap right on my stomach, and it's a distraction, and I actually hate it. And so I don't use a lever belt. I also don't like how difficult it is to adjust these. So you're locked into one position here, and if you need to loosen the belt or tighten the belt, you actually have to break out a screwdriver and move this up and down the belt. So for those reasons, I prefer a prong belt. Now, if you do like lever belts, Pioneer actually makes this adjustable lever belt, which I've shown on my Instagram, which you can do multiple notches without having to unscrew the metal piece on a lever belt. Also, we have a belt graveyard here at the gym that used to be full of old lever belts that were broken. So people take their belt off, toss it on the ground, throw it in your car, toss it on the concrete, take it to strongman competition and toss it on the ground in the parking lot. And these metal pieces tend to break. This one's fine, but they tend to break off, and this piece gets really beat up. So I will say about the lever belt, the only time that I would wear a lever is if I was doing a strongman movement that had 2 implements, and one of them required a belt, one of them did not. For example, if I was doing farmer's carry down and then immediately jumped over to a tire to do tire flips, I would probably wear the lever belt for my farmer's carry down and then just pop it off and jump onto my tire flips beltless, which I usually prefer beltless. So the speed that you can put this belt on and off does pay off if you're doing an event that requires you to take the belt on and off under time. Now I'll talk about this more in a minute, but if you are relatively short, you've got a short torso, not a whole lot of room to put a big fat 4-inch belt on your waist, you might try a 3-inch belt. This is actually just a leather belt. I think it's like 7 millimeter, but you can get a 3-inch 10 millimeter belt, and that might actually feel a little bit better because it's not taking up your entire midsection. So a 3-inch belt might be better for some. If you find that the belt is just too much when you squat or when you deadlift, if you find that your lifting belt actually just gets in the way more than it helps you, I would suggest switching from a 4-inch belt to a 3-inch belt, 13 millimeter belt down to a 10 millimeter belt. Or you might play around with the positioning of the belt on your body, which I'll talk about when I discuss how to wear these belts. Also, you might be wearing your belt too tight or even too loose. All right, I want to talk about this underrated belt. This is just a fabric belt, Pioneer hybrid belt, I think is what he calls it. But this is a soft belt, and I use this probably more often than my 10 millimeter belt. When I'm doing exercises or movements that require a lot of movement, like a clean and jerk, snatch, and the Olympic variations, strongman, when I'm doing an axle bar clean and press, when I'm doing a tire flip, I wear this soft belt because it's not as rigid and bulky as the other belts. When you're doing strongman and you're carrying stuff in front of you, like a keg or a sandbag or a stone, or you're doing tire flips, you do not want a big bulky belt. You actually want this nice belt that fits flush to your body. So this is why this is my preferred belt for a lot of strongman movements and a lot of movements that just require a bunch of moving parts. This belt is also a great option if you are looking for an inexpensive belt. You don't want to spend a bunch of money on a big 4-inch, 10 millimeter, 13 millimeter prong belt. You can buy this. This is also easily portable. So you can roll this up and stick it in your travel bag if you're traveling and going to gyms other than your home gym. And you can't really do that with a big bulky belt. So travels nicely and it's inexpensive. Just because this belt's inexpensive does not mean that it's cheaply made. So this piece here, the Velcro actually goes all the way through the belt and comes right out at this side. So the Velcro goes all the way around your waist. It's not just little tack stitch right here that's gonna rip. The Velcro itself is wide and sticks well. I've seen other belts where the Velcro part actually popped off while someone was lifting. Obviously, this Velcro is eventually going to wear out, but I think Pioneer is actually making a belt where you can just pull this Velcro part out and then buy a new Velcro piece, which is pretty cool. Let me show you how to wear this belt. Put it through your loopholes of your pants, secure it, and it holds your pants up all day. Where I would start is putting the belt right over your belly button. So your belly button's right in the center of the belt. So don't start by putting it above your belly button. Don't put it below your belly button. Start there, right over your belly button. If you need to adjust it, go for it. Play it by feel. Now that I know where it is on my waist, let's talk about tightness. So you want this thing to be snug so that it is tightly hugging your waist. You will know if it's too loose if when you do a squat or when you get down to deadlift, if you feel it move around. So if it pushes up off your back, if it slides up and down, it's probably too loose. So tighten it up a bit. You don't want to tighten it too much. So you want my midsection, my waist shouldn't get a whole lot smaller when I put this belt on. It should just fit snug around my waist here. I don't want you to wrench this thing so tight that it's like a corset pulling your stomach in, okay? That is not gonna help you get a tight midsection. So don't put it too tight. Since I'm here, I'll show you. When you take the belt off, a lot of first timers, when they first wear a belt, they can't get the belt off and they need someone else to do it. Grab the end, pull the end out this way so you kind of go with the direction of the belt. Don't crank it back like this. Just pull it out this way. I'll put my hands here. Can you see this, John? Yep. Put my hands here, push that in and pull that way. And that will get it just like that. So I don't want you to do this. You can't get it out that way. Pull this way, push in, and it should just pop off like that. Sometimes when people are deadlifting, really any lift, but most commonly with the deadlift, they'll wear they will wear their belt too tight. And when they get down in position, the deadlift, it's pulling their stomach in. And they can't set their back. And so they'll say, I can't keep my back flat, or I don't feel strong in the starting position, the deadlift. I can't set my back at all. And the first thing I'll say is, are you wearing a belt? Or if I see the video and they are wearing a belt, I'll say, try it without the belt. And usually they can get into a better position. That means that this belt is hindering your starting position, not helping it. So I would start by loosening the belt a little bit so that you can get a good full belly of air, rigid midsection, and hold your back in position. Also, the things I talked about earlier, if you have trouble setting your back at the start of a deadlift, the belt might be too wide. You might try, instead of a 4-inch, a 3-inch. The belt might be too thick. Instead of a 13 millimeter, go to a 10 millimeter. And if none of that works, no matter what belt I use, I just hate the feeling, I can't get into a strong position at the start, don't wear a belt. Especially if you're not a power lifter. You don't need to wear a belt. You can wear a belt for squats, overhead press, anything you want, maybe not deadlift. I have seen some people, I have met some people who just prefer not to wear a belt when they deadlift. It's not a big deal. Personally, I think that you should only wear your belt when lifting. So once your set's done, take the belt off, set it aside. Before your set, put it back on. Some people like to wear a belt for the whole training session, like bodybuilders, but I would just wear it for the sets that you're actually lifting. Two things to consider when purchasing a belt. If you get a leather belt, you'll see a leather belt, suede belt, a vinyl belt. Make sure that the inside is suede. You don't want to get a belt that has leather on both sides, because the side touching your body is going to slide around on your t-shirt. So you want something grippy like suede to stick to your midsection. Leather on the outside, totally fine. You'll see belts commonly made like this, where they have this bigger section on the back end, the part that goes in your back, and a thinner section around your stomach. I think this is silly, and this is, people who make belts like this probably made this thinking, well, a belt provides back support, so we'll bulk it up on the back end, the part that rests across your back. I think you should get a belt that is the same width all the way through, because you need that support all the way around your entire midsection, on your stomach, on your sides, and on your back. So make sure that if it's a 4-inch belt or a 3-inch belt, it's 4 inches or 3 inches all the way across. Now you will see a slight taper at the end. That's just to easily fit into this prong section here. If you need a belt, go to generalleathercraft.com, Pioneer Fit. They have the best belts that you can buy. There's a reason I promote them. There's a reason I've been promoting them for a very long time. The best belts, best quality, and best customer service. Really, really good people behind that company. So go support them. And Untamed 10 gets you a discount on anything on the whole website. Plus, the official Untamed belt is on that website. Thanks for watching, and always remember, train on time.